Hey, it's okay, and welcome to the okay brush set tutorial. This is a tutorial meant to help anyone who's following along. I've heard that some people try to learn new skills or techniques while they're watching me color, and or some of these effects I do require brushes, and it's pretty much impossible to follow along and kind of figure out how to do it without having the same brushes available to you. I'm really glad that these videos are helping people out. That's the main purpose. And so I feel like this is a very vital video to go with my channel to help you guys learn if you're trying to learn while watching my videos. This is the OK channel. I also have a DeviantArt profile, which is where you can get all these brushes for free. You don't have to pay anything for these brushes. I'm going to pull this down right here. If you look in the description below, you'll find a link to this web page. It is where you can pick up the free download right here of the OK brush pack. It's a free download, a condensed version of my I don't know, maybe 100 brushes in there, and they're all brushes I've handpicked and selected over many hours of use. I get rid of brushes that I don't like or I don't feel like are as good as other brushes that do basically the same thing. So this is a very good condensed version of like the best brushes. I feel like the best brushes that are out there. And I want to go through some of the brushes, maybe all of them. This will be like a 3-part video. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is going to be a little video just explaining all the brushes that come in the this little brush handout pack. I believe the title of it is John's Brush Handout Pack or something like that. But once you load it, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to load your brushes. Now you do have to have Photoshop CC 2017, maybe lower versions, maybe Adobe Photoshop CC 2016 or 2015 will work, but it's Adobe Photoshop CC. I think that might be required in order to work these. I'm not positive about that, but so I right click to pull up my brush, and there's this little gear tool. You go over here, let me get it on the screen. You go here, and then you would go up to load brushes. Can you see that? I'm afraid it's getting cut off. You would go up here to load brushes, and then you would find, oh, there's the brushes that I downloaded a minute ago. So you load those, and it should pull up those. You can also replace brushes if you want to get rid of all your current brushes and just use mine. So you would hit replace brushes and then load those. That's just to clear out all your present brushes and to keep things from getting confusing. I like to use the replace brushes anytime I'm loading new brushes to figure out if they're the right ones first. Anyways, let's go into the brushes. So the first brush is this little 4. And that's just my normal inking brush. Let me get a black stroke here. It's just a pen, like a normal pen, ink pen. And then there's 3 because whenever I'm doing a line, if I'm doing one of these paths, if I'm going to stroke it, I like to use a 3 because it goes really bold and it looks like a 4 whenever the computer does it. But it's like I never press down fully on a 4. And so I like to do a 3 because this is usually how I'm drawing, and a 3 looks pretty accurate to that. And whenever I do a 4, it stands out and it looks computer animated. So want to keep it looking organic. And that's why I have 4 and 3 there. 3 is just a smaller version of 4. 6 is just a bigger version of 4. 6, I just have it's a nice kind of a good middle ground whenever I'm trying to get a little bit bigger to do bigger erasing, but I still want to be a little bit accurate with it. It's not too much bigger. I just use these brushes so much that I like to have an extra little thing, so I don't have to sit here and just be real precise with the pixel thing. So just to explain that further. All right, so here's the 8, just a little bit bigger, you know, nothing really to that. We'll move on to 24. This is the 24 square. So if you hold on to Shift and you do this, you will get a very nice, just a squarish return. One of the reasons why I have this brush in my pack is if you pull up one of these rectangles, if you switch to path up here and then you do this and you stroke it, it comes out to be this perfect corners. That's the important part. Very tight corners. If you're doing box panels or something like that, this is the method I use to do my box panels. And if you want a smaller box panel, all you have to do is click there, go down to like an 8 or 10. I usually do 8, but it depends on your page size. Okay, so there's our square. The square also does brush strokes. You can, if you're trying to get something squarish, it just has a different look. I could pull up like this 8 and do the same thing, and it does. What's going on here? Okay, so, and it just has a different look. It also goes a lot more transparent. If I turn the flow down, you see it doesn't work as good as the square does. The square is pretty amazing if you're just trying to do light strokes. Let's see. Here's another example. Another way you can use this little square thing is doing little windows in the city. You can also try to get little effects, like if you're trying to make things look digitized, like it's dissolving down into digital elements, like someone's being turned into a video game or something. I don't know. These squares are going to help you do that. You know, look like he's filtering down. These are also the squares. So we'll move on to the next brush now. There's a 10. The 10 is just a small little airbrush tool. If I push down really lightly, it comes out really lightly. If I push down hard, it comes out harder. So if I like to make it big and just kind of use a bigger airbrush tool. It doesn't make any difference if you make it bigger or smaller. The next brush is 177, and it is also an airbrush tool, but it is big, and I believe that I have more control. It gives a very light value, and you have to really push down hard to get it dark. So it's just like a very, it's like an airbrush that's meant to just be very light. So you can get some really, really soft gradients with this 177. All right, we're going to go down to the next one, 300. What is the 300? I believe it's just a, it's another airbrush tool. It just comes in a little bit darker. So if you're looking to make things darker, faster, you would go to the 300. Like if you want a heavier airbrush, go to the 300. If you want a lighter airbrush, use the 177 because it comes in really light. And the 377 comes in darker and bigger. So, of course. Next up is, okay, so 10, 177, and 300 are all airbrush pens. Your 19 little brush is good for transparency. It gets smaller and bigger depending on how hard you push down. Okay, so if I push down really lightly, it's just going to be really small and really faint. The harder I push down, it gets bigger and it gets darker. So, you know, you can use that in several ways, but you can also go to the next 19, which will stay the same size, but it will get lighter or darker. There's several times I've needed this stroke, but I've needed to stay the same size. Sometimes with shading clothing, it helps. Let's see, I can't think of any other times I've used it. but these first brushes are the ones I use probably the most and are the most handy. So this one right here, what is this? 28. I can push down and it gives me a variety of scattering of like dots, circles. You can also kind of vary the size, and it's a very like wet brush. It's a very random brush, and so if you're trying to get like a wet look on on highlights, this is also this brush right here. So you can do kind of a like a wet sheen on someone, and that nice little randomizing factor helps it look like it's not fake, I guess. Helps give it a little bit of texture. So anyways, if you're looking to I don't know, get some interesting little dots that are different values, that's the best brush to use. If you're looking for like fireflies, dust in the air, if you're making it romantic, you know, that's a good brush. So moving on to 80. 80 is one I love to use. This is one of my favorite brushes because it's very organic. It gives off a good texture. You can have a lot of variation in how strongly it comes down. You can turn the flow on very low. You make the brush big, and I use this on walls a lot, just to kind of give off this texture, like it's not a like it's not just this flat surface that has no texture at all. Even your walls with paint, they have texture to them, and it just makes something look better when it has a little bit of texture to it. Let's see. So I use this one quite a lot in large areas that I'm trying to get a gradient going. I like to use this more so than the actual gradient tool, because the gradient tool is so uniform and you have very little control over it. This is the gradient tool for those of you who don't know. If I put this on right here, you can see it's very computerized, and it doesn't feel human to me, I guess. So this brush, number 80, is one that I use a ton. 500, this brush right here gives a nice texture too. I put it next to this 800 because we're getting into brushes I use for texture. This one right here, let me see where I've used it. Let's see. I can't find it, so I'm just going to come back up here and give you an example. If you this one is a very light brush. You might not think you're pressing down at first, but you continue using it, and you get this really nice sketchy gradient. It looks like a pencil that you've kind of done a lot of etching with, and I really like how the texture of this comes out. It also is just kind of good for atmosphere. Let's see, next brush would be our this leather brush right here. I call it the leather brush. It looks like elephant hide or leather. It's just a nice texture. It makes things look organic, and it gives it a feeling as opposed to, let's show you what it would look like if it was just a big black spot. Alright, so now there's black, and if we pull up the, what is that, 500 brush, this is what it looks like, 500. So it kind of just automatically feels like this human element to it. It feels alive, and it's pretty awesome. So that's the brush I like to use for texture. 394 is this brush right here. It gives you a nice little cross hatching effect. It's like an airbrush tool that has cross hatch on the outlying edges. It's really nice to prevent it from looking too uniform and let me pull out the airbrush tool real quick, and you see how this kind of looks, I don't know, like it's made on a computer. Well, you turn in there, you switch that brush out for the 394 brush, and you get something that feels a little different, and it feels like it has some, I don't know, like some actual feeling to it. Like there's more to it, like there's a very subtle life to it. All right, so we're moving on to 1000. You'll see here it's a nice brush for getting some very light texture. If you want to break up something that looks too flat, give it something like this, very lightly. It has a little bit of a smoke edge. I also like to make it small and just kind of use this as a brush that I want something to feel like it has texture. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that this 500 brush, it can also feel like rain when you're far away. If you get some dark clouds behind it, you can get some white going and it looks like rain. That's one really cool way to do rain, as opposed to drawing each line. So we're going to move on to 500, and 500 is a pretty simple brush. It's just a little cloudy brush. I believe this is the brush in effect right here. If we want to give it something like a more of an orange brush, let's go orangey. It just kind of gives this little cloudy, smoky effect. It's not really clouds. It doesn't really feel like clouds, but it does feel like haze or smoke. For clouds, I use this 500 brush next to it. It's shaped like a kind of a C. Let's go with a darker brush so you can see what's happening. All right, so it depends on how hard you push and how big these little clouds get, and if you press down hard, they come in darker. I like to use this 500 brush a lot, and usually I start with a mid-tone, something like a darker mid-tone. I'll put it, oh shoot, I'll get pixels here, so we'll get this new layer, and on top of that I'll get a darker brush, and you can see how this works a lot better when you work from a mid-gray to a darker gray, and then push down some hard on some places and do very lightly down there at the bottom. You can also come in and do some lightness on top of that. I usually like to do the darkest. I don't usually work reverse like this. So I'll just take all that back, but if you like to try out new things, try it with some white or maybe some down here below. And you just have fun pressing down hard in some places and light on the other, and stipple it a little, just kind of have Tourette's with it. Okay, so we're moving on to the next brush, which is the 424. I believe the 424 is the brush that I had on down here. See, let's see. Yeah. So this is the 424 brush. It's a very painty brush. It's like dabbing a sponge, a very light sponge, and it gives you a nice kind of spongy gradient if you're going for a gradient, or it kind of just looks smoky or like foggy, cloudy. You can do the dark on the background and do something different on the foreground, and it looks like, I don't know, like this is coming up from a witch's cauldron or something. And we could use what are these the 28 brush, we can use little flares, little dots right here to make it look like these are, I don't know, things falling or coming up from the witch's cauldron or something like that. But you know, just with this little 28 brush, you can do a lot of neat things like that. Alright, so we're gonna move on to the next brush, which is 430. I use this brush a lot in like magical auras and that sort of thing. It kind of gives a nice cloudy, smoky effect. I would like to go ahead and say that I have a very low flow on right now, so I can experience the full range of these brushes. And I give you these brushes, a lot of these brushes, as soon as I pull them out, I fiddle around with them. You can pull up the brush window. If you click on window, there's a brush box up there. You pull it, it'll give you this box, and you can mesh with the scattering, you can mesh with the shape dynamics, color dynamics are very important. So those are very fun ways to mess with your brushes and kind of see what all is possible with them. Whenever you get a lot more experience, you can start creating your own brushes, because whatever you do to these brushes with this box, you can actually save the brush. Let's say you mess with the color and you get it exactly how you want it. That's when you can hit this gear on your brush, and you can hit save brush, or what is this, new brush preset at the very top. You hit that, it'll show you this, and you hit OK, and it'll add it down to your brush presets. It'll be this new one right here. Okay, so we are on 430. This other 491 also gives a very nice thicker smoke clouds. So let's see if we're going to do something, I don't know, like smoke coming out of hell. We might give it this nice little red glow coming up from below. You can see we can get even brighter, and then it looks like it's really glowing. Alright, so you can do real lightly around the edges and make it feel like there's a lot of smoke. And so I use these two brushes for magical auras and that kind of thing, 430, 491. This 55 is actually a star. Let me pull up a colored version of it. How about yellow? If you want to make it look like there are stars coming up, yeah, you don't want to hold it down or else you get something like that. Let's see here. But the star button is also handy for another little neat trick I use on lightning. So because of this is the actual tool right here, the star. It comes with this little outline fuzziness, so you get this nice little glow around it whenever it's white. Let me just show you. Let me go to a white, and let's make it bigger. Let's go to like a 14. Okay, maybe bigger than that. So, all right, there you can see it. It's almost like a neon sign, you know. Let's erase some of that. So if I was going to do like eat at Moe's, it gives a nice little glow outside of it. That's what I think I'm going to start using for lightning. I just found this today, but I like how it gives a little bit of a glow outside it. Usually I use an outer glow when I'm using lightning, and I'll use a layer style and put outer glow and a hard light kind of thing. But I'm going to start using this because if you can tell, it really makes these lines look lit up, and that's great. So we're moving on to 50. The 50 is also this cool thing that would be good for like magic flying through the air. If you get it twirling around each other and stuff like that, it kind of looks electric. Like, let's say there's a spark over here, and this is no layer style. This is all just a brush. Usually this is what it looks like when you apply a layer style. So I'm kind of in love with this brush. I just found it today. Up here, this is when I was messing around with it a little bit, and that's when I gave it an outer glow. I'm not sure it needs that outer glow, but I was testing it out. You can change colors. You can use this brush. Let's do a color dynamic real quick. We'll change the hue jitter. We'll not change the foreground background, not the saturation, and not the brightness, just the hue. So that's what we're going for. We'll see it, we should see it kind of changing colors, but I'm not. Maybe it's, what is this going on? All right, it's the apply per tip. Maybe that's it. Yeah. Okay, so all these different colors. I don't know if you're looking to have something real quick and flashy. This is a nice way to get a little color selection going on. Just change the hue jitter. Don't have apply per tip selected. Let's see. Let's move on to the next one. We're on to 185. This is a real simple brush. It's just lines. You can change the direction of these lines. If you ever need something lined, or if you want it to give it like fabric or something, if you want it to give it this, like, if you want to do a lot of lines, organic lines real quickly, this brush is the one for you. So let's move on to brush number 9. We're getting into these brushes right here are brushes that I like to use if I want a solid line, but I don't want it to be solid. I want it to have character. I want it to have texture, and I don't want it to be a simple ink pen brush. I want it to have some life in it. I'm going to zoom in real quick. You can see here there's little, I don't know, there's spots missing in the brush line. It's definitely got texture. So let's see, I believe 9 is the brush I like to use for candles, like candle flames. We'll go over here to a green candle. So if I was doing a candle, I would start out and I would do small, and then I would just kind of go crazy with the lines. And let's turn flow up some so I can get stronger. But there you go. We'll get just a little bit of a white light going. And that's a good looking candle right there. I think so. So if you want a bigger candle, you could just increase the brush size. And see how it gives you a nice little, I guess, chaos. It gives you chaos, which is the thing I like about it. And when I'm going for these brushes, this 9 brush, 100, and I guess, yeah, 9 and 100, those are the best brushes for chaos. So that's a candle. All right, so that's a creepy candle. It's burning green. Okay, so we go to the 100. This is also a crazy textured line. It's much like the other one, but a little bit more stiff, a little bit more less organic and more rigid. You can use it for twigs, trees, and stuff that you don't want looking real solid. If they're in the background and you want it to just kind of be a suggestion of a tree, then use this brush to kind of get little twigs that aren't real strong and aren't going to distract from your foreground, what's actually happening and needs the attention. Okay, so I'll go ahead and erase some of that. The next brush is the 80. This is just kind of a strange texture brush. I like to use it this way. Let's see, maybe this way. Okay, I want it to be flat. Come on, flatten out for me. I think I've used this brush sometimes if I wanted a strange texture, like be on the ground or something, if I'm shining a light on it. If it's like a dark patch of grass and I want, let's see, we'll do a little quick example of that. If it's a dark patch of grass, let's get it darker. All right, so if it's a dark patch of grass, maybe very dark. This is black of night. It's a solar eclipse on the night. All right, so, which is actually impossible. Then if we want just this, let's go for a really light, let's go for blue because that's the color of the moon. The color. All right, so if we want just a little bit of a spotlight coming down and we don't want it to look too solid, I guess, if you want to kind of blend in with the rest, then this is a good brush to use. All right, so we're moving on to 70, which is a very stripy brush, I guess you'd say. It gives things direction. So let me get this out. So if you're doing something that you want to give just a little bit of a texture to the ground and you want it to feel like it has perspective, like we would cut this off right here, I guess. This is a good brush to use. I've used it on floors that aren't that are like dirt floors. I've used it on sand, I believe, other things like that. Let's see, the next brush is 150. It's another nice brush just like the one below it, but if you want more texture, more chaos, just angle it this way if you want it to be the ground, and there is the ground. It looks like a parking lot or something. Okay, so we move on to the next brush. It's a 77. It gives even more of a variance. I don't tend to use this one much because it's more of it's more particular in the environments you have to use it. I use the two in front of it a lot more often, the 70 and 150. And again, you don't have to go sideways with it. You can go tall if you've got some walls or something you want some texture on. Let's see, what else are we going to do? Let's do a few more and then we'll call it the end of part one. We're running a little long. Let's just go ahead and call it the end of part one. I realize it's about 30 minutes in. We need to get going. So I hope you have learned something from here. I'm going to continue this series, so tune in next week or subscribe for an easy link to the video. I hope you'll get some real fun use out of these brushes. These brushes have helped me through numerous comics. I've gotten through like 30 comics with these brushes, and each time you add more brushes to your set, you gain a new level in your, I guess, drawing portfolio. This is a great way to take advantage of drawing digitally. Photoshop brushes are probably one of the best advantages to using Photoshop, especially for artists. So thanks for watching. This is Okayokayokok. Stop by my DeviantArt profile to see some art and just chat with me. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and I'll be out, so I'll talk to you next time. Thanks for watching.